Hello and welcome everyone. Once again, this is Addie Miller thanking you for joining me for part 4 of our program on rejecting the boundaries of God, the neutral zone, no man's land, whichever you choose to, whichever one helps you to remember it. You can choose one of those selected titles. So today we're going to go dive into the part that I have been most interested in. And I think it's because I learned so much from my research. So it is going to be about the religious and spiritual inclusion of homosexuality and transgenderism in the religious beliefs of the world in general, and then of course how that seeps and is seeping into Christendom. So here we go. Inclusivity of homosexuality and transgender within ancient pagan spirituality since time began. Okay, you can read about it in mythology and folklore, in a lot of the stories and accounts that are may have some minor historical accuracy within them, but then you will recognize that over the years it has kind of evolved into something that really cannot be proven historically. So a lot of that is that. But we also had to look into the spiritual dimensions of paganism, and I'm talking about a lot of American Indian paganism, a lot of Hinduistic, Buddhism, anything outside of the parameters of biblical Christianity would be considered pagan, even outside of Christendom, although there is some paganism that has now been embraced within the walls of Christianity. But if you look at that, there was always some type of elevated position there, a spiritual position, a shaman, or someone who was a spiritual leader. And a lot of times that spiritual leader was either very effeminate, or they identified as a rejection of the opposite sex, or they also might have been openly attracted to and acted upon their interest in the same sex. But a lot of these people were admired in these pagan religions. And we're going to go into that. And I'm going to give you some evidence of that, how they really thought, because this person had adopted a position of being not only being male, but also being female, or not only being female, but being male. And yes, predominantly you will see this, that it referred mostly to men who were effeminate, or they were identifying as women. There were some women too, but it was the majority of it. The majority of these spiritual leaders or shamans were men. So we'll get into more of that. So for ancient pagan spirituality to be accepted today, now let's come back from history, and we're going to start today, and we'll be focusing on our modern day times. For ancient pagan spirituality to be accepted, there must be a systematic, that means purposeful, directed deconstructing of biblical Christianity. Now, the most dangerous deconstructing of biblical Christianity is found within the walls of Christendom. Okay, not outside of the walls of Christendom. That's obvious. But within the walls of Christendom, you will see there has been an intensive deconstructing of biblical Christianity, just from the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. There is a deconstructing and a reforming of what has been long held doctrinal beliefs. So we see that today. Ancient pagan spirituality, which is also called neo means new, neo-pagan worldview is ascribing to the oneness of, or pantheistic or panentheistic view of God. God is all, God is in all, including all of humanity and all of creation. This is connected once again to evolution, theistic evolution. Theistic evolution is just a fancy phrase that means people that believe that God is the one who triggered evolution and then he stepped back and allowed it to take place. Now, you won't be surprised that this is prevalent within the Roman Catholic Church. It was actually coined and promoted by a Jesuit priest named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a paleontologist. Anyway, I won't get into all of him, but he was an interesting character. But theistic evolution is has always been very prevalent within the Roman Catholic Church, even though many Roman Catholics don't even realize that. And then it started seeping into the Protestant denominations and the rest of Christianity. So, and then it also evolves into universalism, meaning all roads lead to God. You can create your own God. You can be your own God. You can, make a rock your God. It doesn't matter what your definition or understanding of God is, as long as you have a God of some kind. It can be you, and everybody's good. Nobody's going to hell. There's a complete rejection of separation of God from his creation. They don't believe in that. So universalism also is being promoted under that banner. An ancient Gnostic worldview separates the material from the immaterial. The flesh can indulge in sinful debaucheries while the spirit remains pure, full of divine light, which is something I was heard very often in the Roman Catholic Church as a Roman Catholic. But it is an Eastern religious worldview. There is nothing biblical about any of that. The distinction between creator and creation has been blurred. And with that blurring comes a casting off of all restraint. So that's where my connection is to LGBTQ, trans. Again, my main focus is Christendom, not the world, but Christendom. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, apologies for that little interruption. I had to go take care of the mail lady. She came to my door. So have no idea where I left off, but let me just continue. So we have the distinction between creator and creation that has been blurred. And with that blurring comes the casting off of all restraints. Again, that's why I am doing this topic, because it shows where it leads us. When we cast off God's not just spiritual, but moral and ethical and biological and just humanitarian restraints. When we cast it all off, it does not end well. So there is a demasculinization and a hyper radical feminization of men. And God, okay, I don't know if you've been keeping up with all this, but they are now calling God she, which is not a surprise, because I, as a form of feminist, that's what your dream was that you had a divine feminine God that you could make in your own image, basically. So anyway, but now they're pushing the divine feminine, which is, in reality, friends, this is what radical feminism did. They defeminized women. They made women more masculine, while radical feminism feminized men. And here's just a little FYI from a former feminist who is now born again and understands the rebellion that all of that was and is. I want my man to be masculine. I want him to be the man with the loving attributes of Christ. And praise God, that's what my husband is. My husband is a very a very masculine guy. He hunts, he fishes. I told somebody the other day he has the best qualities of my father. My father was a musician too. Isn't that funny? But he's a hard worker. He's conscientious. He's caring. So we want that. I want women deep down want a knight in shining armor who is going to save them from the bad guy. Really. I mean, I can do that myself, honestly. I can. But I like having a husband that can do that for me. I think it's wonderful. That's how God made us. I don't want an effeminate husband. And my husband does not want a masculine wife. And we should consider that. How did we learn that? We learned that from God's word. So let's continue. Colossians 2:8. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. What are rudiments? Rudiments are the principles of the world. That's what rudiments are. Colossians 2:9, for in him dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Okay, that's speaking of Jesus Christ. He is our hope. He is the answer. You want to know who you are? Go to him with the understanding that you are a sinner in need of a Savior, and you will find what your true identity is. I speak from experience. Okay, so let me get into some detail here, because this is what triggered this topic. Okay, this is what triggered this topic. I ran across this. Sorry, guys, I'm going to turn my phone down so it doesn't distract us. I ran across this bit of information, and of course, it drew my interest because I'm always interested in that. I love history. But here is what triggered this topic, okay? It's called the Cult of Galli, Galli, okay? It is mentioned in 2 Kings 23:7, around the time of King Josiah in the 600s BC. And this cult of Galli was about the official state goddess of that time. All right. So let me give you a little bit of information about this cult. Okay. Beginning in the 3rd century in Rome. All right. So I could park it right here for the next 30 minutes, but I won't. Pay close attention with the connection between this and Rome. Here it comes. Okay, it just blew my mind. I hope it does yours too. Here we go. Devotees to Sybil's consort Attis, Attis, who was said to have neutered himself in a fit of divine mystical frenzy. And it's an initiation act utilized by the Galli priest of Sybil, who after the procedure, which was basically emasculating themselves or getting someone else to do it, in an ecstatic celebration known as the Day of Blood, and it was performed at a temple called the Temple of Victory. But these Galli priests of Sybil, who after they're having emasculated themselves, dressed exclusively in women's attire. Now, here's the picture you have to do. They did this so that they could serve her, this pagan goddess Sybil, in Rome. Now, the connection is a lot of statues archaeologically that have been dug up over the centuries are now labeled Mary, the Roman Catholic Mary. So I hope you're making that connection with me. All right. So they would dress in women's attire. They would play musical instruments, and they would dance seductively. Sybil's cult icon was a massive black rock, and it was used and offered as at a temple in Rome. Now, the black rock thing just immediately brought to mind to me the Kaaba of Islam, which is a big, large, square box that has a rock said to have fallen to the earth when Muhammad ascended to heaven. Okay, so that's a whole other teaching. But all of this triggered in my mind from stuff that I had learned previously here. All right, I apologize for my clock. I forgot to turn it off. Enjoy the music while it's playing. I hope it doesn't distract you. Now, here's the more interesting part of this. Okay, this cult icon, which was a black rock at a temple site in Rome, is on Palatine Hill. Now, the Palatine Hill is also called the Temple of Victory. Okay, it's a pagan site, and it is on Palatine Hill. Now, here's the interesting part. Palatine can be translated heaven. Okay, now note this. This really, really connected dots for me. Palatine Hill is one of the 7 hills of the mountains of Rome. The Vatican. Palatine Hill lies at the center of Rome's 7 hills, thought to be the foundation of Rome's beginning. Palatine Hill was an exclusive area solely for emperors, just like it's an exclusive area solely for popes today. I love when I find stuff out like this. I really do. It is also the oldest site known in that area. The Colosseum and the Roman Forum are located on Palatine Hill. Also, it's also the site of Emperor Domitian's palace that stood between 81 and 90 AD. There is some historical evidence that the goddess Sybil may have previously been known as Agdistis. Now, here's the thing. As this divine feminine goddess worship spread throughout the then civilized world, they would change her name. Okay, she might have been known as Artemis, Diana, etc. Sybil. All right, so she might have also been known as Agdistis, an entity of great power with both male and female attributes. The Galli priests of the goddess Sybil were transgender cross-dressers. They wore lavish women's costumes, primarily in yellow. That was their favorite color. A type of head turban with elaborate jewelry, long bleached hair, and heavy theatric makeup. The Galli priest wandered around begging for financial assistance and told fortunes to earn money to bring to the pagan temple site of Sybil. During their frenzied worship, they would run around wildly, performing dances while playing pipes and tambourines. At the height of their ecstasy, they would flog themselves until they bled. Now, other than the flogging part, think about this. They would run around wildly performing dances while playing musical instruments. Does that not make you think of the transgender shows, events that you see today that a lot of people are exposing their children to It does me. Because I tied my heartstrings and I watched a couple of them. And that's what I thought of when I read this. They're doing exactly what the Sybil priest of the Gali cult did back then. They're doing it today under the banner of education, of human rights, etc. Compare this behavior now that's witnessed in today's society from the trans and LGBTQ community. Think about the parades, like the parades they have in New Orleans. This is exactly the behavior of the priest of Sybil at in the Gali, Galli, Galli cult. And in the many festivals that originated from pagan origins. And unfortunately, friends, a lot of the festivals in my part of the country, I don't know about your part of the country, but in my part of the country, they're all under the banner of the Roman Catholic Church. They are condoned, they are promoted, they are endorsed by Roman Catholic leadership. Even with trans. Look at Mardi Gras. And to some degree, you can also see, like the flogging and all of that, that's in Roman Catholicism. Just like the temple priests of the cult of Gali did. Okay, you can see a lot of this behavior also, these atrocities that are taking place under the banner of Holy Spirit in charismatic behaviors as well. So there is nothing new under the sun, friends. God does not change, nor does his word. What was an abomination 3,500 years ago remains an abomination today. There is evidence of the truth of man's sin in mythology and in folklore. Mythology, paganism, mysticism, polytheistic religion, shamanism, sorcery, witchcraft, etc. Cultural beliefs are foundational to cultural myths. It includes accounts of romantic sexual affection, attraction between beings of the same gender, and also between human beings and animals, or chimeric beings. That's whether a person is part human and part animal. You see that in Greek mythology. This can all be seen under trans and LGBTQ expression. Many myths describe homosexuality and gender fluidity to a divine act of their gods through supernatural means. Remember I told you about the shamans and how they're elevated, the witch doctors, the spiritual leaders, those who are considered mediators. A lot of them were homosexuals. A lot of them were transgender. Myths often include LGBTQ identification as divine experiences. Sacred texts found within recorded history in many cultures, I'm talking about pagan cultures now, folklore myths often include LGBTQ plus transgender themes. Many myths include deities who transform themselves into either gender, male or female. Okay, they can switch from one to the other. Chimeras, like I just said, human-animal combination, and disguise themselves as the opposite gender, whichever was necessary, male or female, for a religious purpose. And again, bestiality is also included in this. Myths and folklore also can include androgyny, whether you're both or neither gender. Aztec or Hawaiian mythology includes deities teaching people about same sex causes, same sex attraction, and same sex practices. In many polytheistic, meaning plurality of gods, cultures, the myths include personalities who can supernaturally change gender or be both genders simultaneously. Sexual encounters with both genders, bisexuality and pansexuality, are prevalent. In many myths, the universe or the world is created by a genderless or hermaphrodite. Sometimes it's hard for me to read my own handwriting. Hermaphrodite, both male and female beings, and mankind's creation and reproduction attributed to sexual encounters between divine beings and a human. You can also see this in ufology, like with ancient alien beings are many times described as genderless or gender neutral, or they're shown to impregnate those who have been abducted, and so on and so forth. These mythologies are found in Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, which is the Aborigines, the Mayans, Native American, like the Inuit folklore. In Inuit shamanism, the first two humans were male. Their sexual encounter resulted in the pregnancy of one of the male humans, who was only capable of giving birth after a spell was cast on him that changed him into a female. So even they know they're limited in their sorcery. There's also very prevalent is homosexuality, bestiality, in Taoism, in Buddhism, and in Confucianism as well. So I would say it's just throughout all of the religions. Unfortunately, the pagan religions of the world. Unfortunately, we're seeing all of that seep into Christendom. There is the Santeria, which is a syncretism of sorcery and Roman Catholic teachings, very similar to voodoo. I'm very familiar with that because of where I was raised. I was raised a generational Roman Catholic, and we had a lot of voodoo and casting spells and all of that in my Cajun culture. And so I'm very familiar with it. I've been around it. I've been exposed to it. I never participated in it, but I was around it when it was being promoted and incantations were being done and all of that. So that's very prevalent within there's the Haitian Voodoo, and the Louisiana Voodoo includes ancestor worship, which is necromancy, which is also found in the Roman Catholic Church. Voodoo spirits are identified with transgender identities and same-sex encounters. And one primary spirit, Iwa, is called Guide Nibu, which is Haitian Creole. Now think about this is what came to mind when I read this, was the Awa of the movie Avatar, who was the Holy Mother Goddess in there, where they connected with her through nature and in that tree of life and all of that. Now this Iwa, or this Haitian Creole shaman, is sometimes depicted as an effeminate drag queen who supernaturally inspires those he possesses or influences to act out licentious sexual acts, primarily transgender or lesbian behavior. So does it surprise you that you find this exact kind of behavior in festivals that are promoted through transgenderism, cross-dressing, and homosexual activities and behaviors? No. I mean, I was raised around it, so it's not shocking to me when I see it. I get shocked when I read the connection between that and demonic possession, which I think a lot of it leans itself to that explanation. The common characteristic of LGBTQ plus spirituality is progressive depravity and evidence of demonic possession. Now, let me make a disclaimer. I'm not saying that people that are heterosexual, that are participating in or involved in illicit sexual deviancy cannot be demonically possessed, but because we are talking about LGBTQ plus and transgenderism, I'm going to focus on that. Okay. Here's some additional examples from cultures with pagan religious and shamanistic leadership. Within this is very similar to the Galli cult to Sybil that's found in Rome on Palatine Hill. There, okay. So this is very similar. So keep that in mind as I read. Within some sections of Indian culture, there are the Hijras. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hijras. Okay, sexually impotent males who have ritualistically removed their reproductive parts while facing an image of a goddess to be imbued with the ritualistic powers. They often wear women's clothing, carry feminine names and mannerisms, entertain male sex partners, and often practice prostitution. In Hinduism, this is considered a divine calling. So we're basically seeing the designer being rejected to redesign what the sinful, fallen flesh desires. They are usurping the designer. They're doing their best to usurp the designer, because nobody can usurp the creator designer, but they are doing their best to do that. Another in Hinduism is the Sadhin, Sadhin. These are young women who reject the traditional marriage and take a certain male role, form their own societal group, and retain their female label. She never ceases to be a woman, but she acts and behaves like a woman. Like a man, pardon me. She acts and behaves like a man. In Samoan culture, there are the Fa'afafine, which interprets to like a woman or in the manner of a woman, which is effeminate men who practice the typically female roles in society, but still identify as male. But they live their lives as a female. In Native American Indian mysticism, there is the two-spirit, a label secured by urban Native American gays and lesbians, saying that they have two spirits, a male spirit and a female spirit. That's in American Indian shamanism. The Navajo Nadli, effeminate men who took on feminine gender roles and often dressed as women. The Mahave Alaha, men who dressed in women's clothing and took on feminine roles, including same-sex encounters. The Mahave, women who behaved in a more masculine way. They did this intentionally, okay? Intentionally. None of these cultures considered these people as a gender other than the biological sex they were born with. So even though they behaved in the opposite sex manner, they still identified as the gender they were born with. That's one differentiation that I saw in a lot of the paganism that I researched. In Brazilian culture, gender diversity was not labeled as being transgender, but just as a gender behaving as the opposite gender. If their role was the male in the same-sex couple, they were not considered homosexual. In Brazilian culture, they are called the bica, or the viado, or the transvesti. Okay, so they were still considered men, but they were the feminine part of the couple. Which I always say that. Why is it, if you have two male partners and one of them identifies as the woman, what does that tell you? They know that they're supposed to be male and female. That's always struck me. In all cultures, the embracing of trans, LGBTQ, etc. lifestyle are primarily pagan religious cultures. Gender fluidity outside of only male and female is incorporated into the cultural religious practices, as we have already mentioned previously. Now, here's one more let me give to you. Some understanding is evident in Indonesia, known as the Waria or the Kalabai. They are not labeled gay because they seek to have encounters with heterosexual men. So these are men who claim that they're having encounters with heterosexual men. So you see how they try and blur the lines there? They're not. Okay, apologies again. Had another quick little interruption. Prentice just came in. So I'm going to continue and then I'm finishing up. So hang on and we'll be done for part 4 of this series. So let's see, where was I? Oh, in Thailand, the culture, this is seen in a very similar way as that in Indonesia. So in all cultures, the embracing of trans, LGBTQ, etc. lifestyle was primarily found in pagan religious cultures. The gender fluidity outside of the only male and female is incorporated into the cultural religious practices, as we have already mentioned previously. In Indonesia, again, androgynous shamans known as bisus primarily identify as homosexual males. During their religious rituals, they go into possession trances to communicate with spiritual beings. It's also a part of the Afro-Brazilian religions, such as the Candomblé, who surrender to a full possessed trance. These priests are either effeminate males or females taking a surrendered role to allow the spirit to enter into them. So basically possession. Similar religious rituals are also practiced in Kenya and Hawaii. Now, let's again go further back to the ancient Mesopotamian gender fluid, gender bending priests who practiced religious rituals in worship to men and goddesses, including Ishtar. Remember the cult of Gali, who were male prostitute priests who worshipped at the temple of Cybele. Similarly, pagan priests in Rome, known as the Galli, neutered themselves, dressed as women to serve the goddess Cybele, as we have already discussed. Cybele was an intersex, bisexual female deity who was born both male and female. So I hope you made all of those connections with what I'm doing to address this topic and how it is a spiritual issue. It is a fallen, sinful man issue, but it's also practiced, promoted, endorsed in pagan spirituality. The horror of it all is that it's coming into Christendom. And we're going to talk about more about that on our program number 5. So that'll be for next time. So until then, I thank you for joining me, and I just do pray that this is helping you, and we hope to see you again next time, and have a blessed day.